First of all, I want to thank the Flint Library and all the VSOs. Even my own American Legion chapter 413 is a sponsor today. And I wanted to kind of do an extra shout out for Joe and his comments earlier about VSOs. And part of my duties, full-time in Lansing, I work closely with the Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency and the VSOs, and they're doing a heck of a job. And I need to explain it to you. 6 years ago, we in Michigan were dead last in the country when it came to veterans claims in GDX or dollars coming back to veterans. 4 years ago, the Veterans Affairs Agency was created. The Veterans Service Office organizations have worked diligently with that agency on getting the word out about claims processing. We now lead the country in fully developed claims, which means when the claim goes in, it's all ready to go and it's expediting the time. But there's a tremendous number of Michigan veterans that don't know about their benefits, as Joe's alluding to. So what I usually do, typically the 10-second commercial is just called 1-800-MICH-VET, M-I-C-H-V-E-T. So they will get you routed to a VSO and get that process started. But there's so many veterans that aren't telling their stories we're not talking to that are missing out. But for starters, you know, I represent my boss, the Adjutant General of Michigan, and the 10,500 men and women of the Michigan Army and Air National Guard. A lot of people have kind of lost track of the fact that we're still in the war fight. You know, it has been since 2001. Just in the Michigan National Guard alone, we've deployed over 25,000 people. 21 of our soldiers have paid the ultimate sacrifice. We just returned my old field artillery battalion from the Middle East who was in combat. A year ago, our A-10s just got back. We just sent a helicopter battalion to the Middle East, and I don't see any immediate end in sight. And that's just your Michigan National Guard. That doesn't count your reserves, Army Reserve, Marine Reserve, or your active forces. So we have a fair amount of experience with combat, a fair amount of experience with stress, post-traumatic stress, which I'll get to here in a few minutes. But this is a great time for a great event. The Peaceful Warrior Project came to our headquarters probably 3 years ago. Wow, it really kind of opened our eyes to telling the stories and listening, and the music is amazing. Every time I've been to one of these events, the musicians, they touch a chord and they're so professional, so thank you for that and continuing that. But as they add to the program, telling the stories, it's very important. So I've got two kind of personal stories to kind of tie that together. Unfortunately, my platoon sergeant from Desert Storm, Alvin Dixon, passed away a month ago. Alvin's buried at Great Lakes, and a group of us will get together next weekend and we go visit grave sites of people that we've served with. But at Alvin's funeral, I spoke of our service together in combat, and I remember his son Al, when we deployed, he was 8 years old. Al refused to get out of the car and see his father go off to war. At the funeral, I talked about what his father did in combat, and he was a Vietnam veteran as well, and I can attribute a lot of my success in my career to having served with Alvin Dixon. After the funeral, Al, his son, and I got to talking. I was kind of disappointed for a couple reasons. The family didn't have enough knowledge of his military service, and in the obituary got his service wrong. And Al told me that he had never heard about his dad's time in combat because his dad was too proud, and young Al had swore that he was so mad at his dad for leaving he would never talk to him, and now he regrets that, having never told those stories. So Al and I are connecting, getting together and communicating on a regular basis and trying to piece together for him and the rest of his family what he missed for all those years. And even more personal, I don't know how much more personal we can get than that, but on another personal level, my grandfather served in World War II. And when my uncle passed away in the 90s, I was a young combat veteran, went out to Iowa for the service, and afterwards, with all the family around, my grandfather asked me how was combat in Desert Storm, and we got to talking, and I asked him how was combat in World War II, and he said D-Day was hell. And my grandmother dropped her plate. Nobody in my family knew that my grandfather served on D-Day because he promised he would never tell anybody unless they asked. So we have an obligation thank you all for being here. For the veterans that are going to tell your story, please tell it. But I think we all have an obligation after this event, if there's any media, to get out there, to get more veterans to come in and tell their story.